My name's Bill Poutler, and this is
I'm Luisa.
Louisa, and we're doing a podcast called Awakening and Conscious Living. We're trying to have grounded conversations, demystifying spiritual awakening. We explore how everyday people, oh, I'm going to cry, can recognize moments of inner awakening, the myths that distort it, and why awakening often starts with discomfort or confusion and not bliss.
Yes, and welcome back to another episode of it. Today we're going to talk about spiritual bypassing a little bit. We're going to get into some of those topics and um yeah, we'll share some of our experiences as far as that goes. So, Bill, what is spiritual bypassing for you? Why do you define that?
I'm not super familiar with this term. Um, I want to throw that back at you and
Spiritual bypassing are the ideas that some people use to sort of not dig into their spiritual work, not do the inner work, but rather take a spiritual term like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or, just let God will take care of it, instead of actually focusing and looking within and figuring out what it is emotionally, what it is they're feeling, what it is that's causing that. And some of those examples, like the ones that I shared, but also like minimizing your feelings, also being like, that's okay because if I feel this way, this is the way that it was meant to happen. This is the way that it was meant to be, and things of that nature.
yeah, I understand what you're saying now. And I would say that a lot of the spiritual community does this. It's just like, ooh, I'm awakened now, and I do yoga and meditation, and ego is a very tricky thing. Um, the ego it wants to be in control. It wants to think it's right. It does not, the ego does not want to be let go of. Okay. And so, uh, it'll, even in the final moments and the end of awakening, ego will tell you, oh, now you're awakened and you're better than other people. And, you know, and you'll go, and then you'll go, well, just one more belief system that I have. And it's just these layers of belief systems we have. And the ego will just keep refining them until you think, I'm spiritually aware now. But it's just another ego trip.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that? I'm going to ask you, how do you get to that base level where you've let go of everything? You're not spiritual bypassing. You've let all your belief systems go and you just allow.
So I really, this question, I had to check myself. I had to
Okay.
really check myself as I was like, oh, what is spiritual bypassing and why am I doing that right now? So I believe that, if you're on the spiritual journey, you don't necessarily ever get to that point where you're like I know everything and I'm better than everyone, like, because I feel like it's an ongoing journey. And wait, ask me your question again.
I think the question is somewhere along the lines of, what is it when you get to that point where you're not spiritual bypassing, you're not, it's not the last ego game, you're just at neutral.
I feel like the spiritual bypassing is something that may come around because, like I shared, I caught myself. I was doing that. I was literally in the middle of sending an email to a friend and realizing that the place that I was coming from, that I was responding from, was the place of being like, oh, like it'll be what it'll be, like sort of thing. And when I took that pause in that moment, what I realized was, no, this is exactly what spiritual bypassing is, because there are deeper emotions that I'm not digging into, that I'm trying to like deflect from in this moment, that are really things that I need to be digging into. So I believe that while there may be a point where you're not spiritually bypassing on a regular basis as much as perhaps I was before I was awakening, that there is not necessarily a point in which you will not do that, because if you are living life in the everyday life and with all the responsibilities that we have and all of the things that we have to do, it is possible that you could be spiritually bypassing. But if you do slow down, if you do the mindfulness and the stillness, I do feel like you will get to a point where you will be able to recognize it easier and easier as you go. But yeah, I don't know that there is a point where there is no spiritual bypassing. I don't think there is a point where you're not affected by all of these other potential things that life can bring onto you, because we're still very part of the 3D human experience, right? Like we're still living here in this realm. And as much as we are realistic and open and can see things for what they are, there are things that life just throws your way that no matter how spiritual you are, and I say that on purpose,
Right.
no matter how spiritual you are, you need to dig deeper and you need to pause to be able to understand where you're at and what it is that's happening so that you can dig deeper and go inward.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a continual releasing. And, I don't even like the verbiage anymore. Like, the spiritual, you know, I mean, that in and of itself creates this us and them type of thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, another sign think is when we start to defend ourselves, you know, that's a sign like I still got work to do, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's a good one. And that's the ego, right? That's the ego wanting to be like, "Oh, no, I'm right, you're wrong," or at least I need to put my point of view on the table, like, you know what I mean? Like, those things are the ego, because when you're really grounded in yourself, right? Like, when you know who you are, the path that you're walking, when you know what you're here to do, how you're here to do it, there is no need for anybody to understand your point of view. Like, that's a great plus, and it's a beautiful thing when you can find other people along your journey to share that with, but there is no need to defend your position, to defend why you see the world the way you do, why you live the way you do, why you make the choices that you do.
Yes. My family's got very strong personalities, and there's always a lot of comments, "Why are you doing that? Why wouldn't you do this?" And I don't know. At some point in time, uh, you you gotta quit defending and just go, "I don't know." That's kinda where I am right now. Like, I don't know why I do this. I don't know. Call me crazy, you know? Call me whatever. It doesn't I don't know. And if you really start thinking about it, I mean, do we ever really know? We just kinda like we get up every day, and and once you start releasing some of these belief systems that we have and these traumas that we have, you just get up and you just kinda start flowing,
Yes.
um, which is beautiful. But I will say, and I think before we hit, record this morning, I mean, like, right now, I'm in a state of, like, I don't know. I'm so neutral that I'm, like, bored to death, and I'm like and so, I don't know if other people feel like that when they get at some point or not, uh, but I'm like, why even get up out of bed sometimes? And it's not like I'm depressed, but it's just like, I don't know. Am I tired of walking on this earth? Am I tired of giving? Am I tired of I don't know, I have no desire to get on a plane, fly across the country to go see something. It just feels like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm so glad you shared that because I experienced that. Um, and when I first started to experience that nothingness, that like, I don't know, like, I don't know. It's just like, I want nothing and maybe everything at the same time, but like, I want to go everywhere, but also nowhere. Like, just yeah, and those moments of boredom, those have been happening a lot more for me recently. I've actually picked up like 3 new hobbies because I'm like bored. And what I found is that even the hobbies, sometimes I'm like staring at them. I'm like, yeah, but no, and I I do think that is part of that flow state, a term I also, again, like you, I think I'm sick of the terms too. I don't necessarily love applying terms to everything, but I guess it's the best way to put it in words is like that flow state. When I wake up in that flow state, I've had this conversation with a friend, and my friend that I initially had the conversation with, she's like, "I'm glad that you're sharing this because I've never shared this with other people because it sounds like this may be like, people may take it as like suicidal, but it's like that's not it. It's not like I want to exit this earth. It's not like I want to commit you know what I mean? That's not what it is. It's that if I were to not be here, I would be completely fine with that. Like, and
Yeah.
it is that like flow state where it's like I feel like you're one with everything and one with nothing, and I don't know what that otherwise feels like, so it's, like, the only way that I can describe it is, like, just being. Literally just being, and then in our 3D world, in our thinking brain, it's like, "Oh, that's just boredom," because there is nothing, and there you have no direction, wants, desires, dislikes, likes in that moment, you're just like, "I'm here, I exist," you know?
Yeah. I don't know what to do with it. It's, it just is. I mean, in some ways, it's really beautiful. I mean, I can go out and, sit in the sun and ground and just be peaceful,
Yeah.
you know?
Do you think that's what, like, living in blissful peace feels like?
Mm, I don't know. We obviously, I mean, I've got a whole thought process on why we come to Earth
Mhm.
because it is a real 3D, very physical, heavy type of environment. And we have to work hard. Like I'm somebody that likes to have fun, you know? But I'm having a harder and harder time having finding some fun. Uh, I do love to ride my bicycle and just listen to music and go sit in fields and sun, which I've done a couple times this week, even though it's been cold. I'm sitting out in, I guess, 40-degree weather with my shirt off. As long as the sun's on me, I'm good.
Fun,
Uh,
yes.
um, and and I've had some interesting experiences. I went to the post office the other day to mail a birthday present for my dad, who's turning 95, who just turned 95. And this guy, he looked about my age-ish, super thin. And I'm just trying to paint a picture here. Black, felt a little homeless, standing in the big downtown post office. Well, big for the town I live in. It's the big post office, right? And he goes, "Hey, I know you. We used to work together." And I go, "Really? Where?" And he's like, "Remember me? I'm James." And he kind of kept going on. I'm like, "I don't know that I know you." No, no, we worked, all that. And he goes, "Will you give me a ride?" And um, so I go, James, uh, I need to get this present mailed to my dad. This is my critical thing here. So I get an envelope, I fill everything out, I go stand in line, I buy some stamps, have a nice they've got Muhammad Ali stamps out now. Bought a couple sheets of them. They're really cool. I told her when they have Malcolm X, call me because I want some of them too. But anyway, um and I completely forgotten about this guy, right? And I walk out and he's there and he goes, "Are you going to give me a ride?" And he told me he had leukemia and he was going to get his chemotherapy. So I'm like, "Is it far?" He goes, "No, it's not far at all." And I go, "Okay, fine." So we go out, we get in my car. My car sits real low to the ground. And it's like we're right here because my car is like this big. And he smells a little bit, but that's okay. There's no problems. I'm used to being around street people. Um, so anyway, he goes, "Take her right out of here and get on the interstate." I said, "Why are we getting on the interstate?"
I thought you
He
said it was
goes,
close.
and he goes, "Oh, it's just right down here." And so I get on the interstate and I go, "So how far are we going?" He goes, "To Trussville," which is like 30 minutes. Maybe it's 25. Okay. Uh, and he wants me to drop him off at the Sam's. So I'm like, I'm in. Just drop him down there, put some classical music on. You look over, he starts to fall asleep.
Oh,
And we talk. He wakes up and we chat just a little bit. And I bless him and drop him off. And I don't know. It was just something to do.
yeah,
It was my story. It's my experience.
yeah.
And I don't know. What else are we supposed to do besides stuff like that? I'm not sure.
I'm glad that you shared that. I had an experience where I was with my 9-year-old and we were driving to pick up our groceries here at HEB, and I saw this old lady, and she maybe like in her 80s, and she's standing there with a walker, and this is a really big like, there's a whole bunch of stores in this little plaza, and, I'm driving from the time that I come into the plaza all the way until I'm driving, like, past her, and she's just standing there. And, I mean, she looks very well, like, groomed, very well taken care of, like, you could see she had a fresh haircut, she might have even had, like, her nails d but I'm noticing, I'm like, the whole time that I'm driving, I'm like, she's just there by herself, and my daughter, she's 10 now, actually, she just turned 10 a couple weeks ago. She's very shy, she's very shy, but I drove past the lady and I saw her just standing there kinda looking around, like, aimlessly, and I was like, "Maybe she's, like, having a hard time, maybe she, like, needs to get to a car or something." So I drove back around, my daughter's yelling, "No, no, no," the whole time. I drove back around and I asked her, I said, "Do you need help? Do you need any kind of help?" And she said, "No, thank you, my ride is here." And after, my daughter's like, "Why did you ask her that? We probably looked so weird." And I was like, "It's not about that. That's not what it's about. It's about she could have needed help. She could have been in distress. She could have been by herself. She could have felt lost. There's so many things that it could have been that for me, a perfectly capable 30-something-year-old woman, to help her, it would have caused me nothing. It would have cost me nothing more than like 3 minutes of my time to help her get. And even if it did cost me like 30 minutes of my time to help her feel safe or whatever it was that she needed, or help her get to her car or help her call a family member, like you just don't know where people are. And the reason I share about my daughter is because to your point is that you have forgotten, like, in general, how important it is to, like, do these little things that are so meaningful to other people that they're now weird. Now it's weird and it's odd. And it's like, you know, oh my gosh, like, that is so creepy or so this or so that. And I love that you gave him the ride and that you shared everything about this story because those are the things. He looked homeless, he smelled a little. This lady looked lost, as well groomed as she could have looked. It could have been a full scam, something that I had to cross my mind as I'm approaching with my daughter. And it's all these things, but in reality, I think that at the end of the day, the intention and like who we are shows up in those moments. Like who you are and how far along you are on your spiritual journey in terms of it's not just about you, and you can recognize that how well you are and how good you are with yourself shows to the outside world in those moments, in those ways, right? In the ways where it's like, if I can help you, like, it's not going to take anything from me. Why not just go ahead and help somebody who needs it, And I'm glad that I did that. And I want to be more intentional about doing more things like that because, whether he was really going to get his hormone therapy or whether he was going to Sam's to buy, like, whatever it was,
It doesn't
it
really
doesn't
matter.
matter. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, if if you flip the coin and you go, I'm standing in a post office trying to find a ride because for whatever reason, I don't have enough money, I don't have a car, uh, I don't know. I got drunk this morning and lost my whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. Just doesn't matter. I'm not saying that person was a drunk or a drug or anything. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. I could have lost my car keys, right? Just sometimes we need help and we're not doing it to show other people because you talked about other people see this,
Mhm.
but it's not for show,
Mhm.
obviously.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I've learned in talking to a lot of street people and helping street people is it helped me get over my fear of, you know, these people are crazy or they're different or they're whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And we all just have to love each other where we are. And I've also had encounters where people have helped me. I could tell you stories. And then like I turned around and they weren't there anymore. And I think it's angels. And I think some of these people that we help, they're actually angels that are put in our lives to not to test us, but to help pull some of that beauty out of us.
Yeah. It's a beautiful way to put it. I'd never thought about it that way. But it is true. Maybe just a reminder for us of where we are on our journey or like on what matters. Like what ultimately, as important as it is that we are one and that we are ourselves and take care and love and nurture ourselves, is that we also are a part of a collective. We're a part of a greater system, and how we show up for ourselves impacts that system. You know what I mean?
I mean, think about this for a second. What if people that are in need, whatever type of need they're in, especially people that are, I'm going to say, you know, maybe they're homeless, or maybe they're getting run out of their country, or maybe they're super poor, or maybe they have health issues, doesn't matter. What if those people come into our lives and into the world to help pull out the empathy in us? What if they chose that role? What if they chose a role to be a street person, to pull out the empathy that we need to have?
That's beautiful.
That would be a hero's role, right?
It is. And that's exactly what it becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and whether that's true or not, I don't know, but obviously, um, there's a purpose there.
I agree. I ended up in a neighborhood here locally where and I didn't know until after, where I guess it's like a don't go there sort of neighborhood because there's a lot of homeless. We have a large homeless population in Austin. It's devastating, really. Um, and again, it was just myself and my daughter, and I was there for gas, and it was one of those places where later on reading in the internet, it was like, "Don't go there alone," and I was there alone with my daughter, and I looked around, and that was the first time I asked myself that question about the homeless, on a soul level was, why do they choose why did that soul choose that role? And I love what you have just placed, that, possibility that you've just placed on it because that was one of the things that crossed my mind. I said, as a soul, to choose that, right? Knowing the hardships that comes with, knowing the heartbreak that comes with over and over and over and over and over again. Like, why does a soul choose that? And I think that's a beautiful answer. And I think it is for all of us a reminder because for me in that moment, what I felt was when I was putting gas, I felt fine, like, I felt I there was no concern for me whatsoever, I did not feel like I was at risk at all, and was I vigilant? Of course, because I
Right.
have a kid with me, so it's not just myself, if something were to happen, it was, like, my kid too, but I think it has a lot to do with, like, grounding yourself and really thinking, beyond the ego and thinking beyond what you can see and what you're being told you're supposed to be seeing it as. I think that's really important, and I think that also brings us to the point of, like, how can you tell if someone's actually healing versus avoiding, the healing? And I think that's part of it, like, being able to do things like that and being able to be selfless in ways that allow you to make really difficult and big life decisions versus not making them because of, all the external pressure, societal pressure. And I'll just give an example is like, how do I know if I'm actually healing versus avoiding? Is one big thing was where I live. That was a cause of a lot of shame for me just because of how I grew up and where I grew up. It was a cause of shame. Specifically for me, it was like the rent versus own thing. I grew up with a family that, they own a lot of real estate and like first generation Americans that don't speak English type people just owning a gazillion pieces of real estate. And for
Mhm.
me, I'm like first generation, I'm an educated woman. Why don't I own real estate? And I did for a long time, like on and off. But when I had to make that decision about whether I was going to buy on my own or whether I was going to rent, and I decided to rent for the ease of it, there was a lot of shame that came with that. So making big life decisions like that, where it's like, that was a moment for me that let me know that I was healing. I was no longer focused on like the external thing. I was able to process in that moment, go within and figure out why that decision was so hard for me. And when I realized the root of it, then I was able to, work through it, understand it, do some meditations and a lot of the things that I do to be able to process after understanding the why. And then I was actually able to make a decision from that healed place about what I really wanted versus what I thought I should be doing because society, because of what my parents did, because of, all of these other things. And those, to me, that's how you know that you're healing versus avoiding, is being able to make these decisions, taking into consideration really what you want. Of course, as long as it's not hurting other people versus doing things because of the external expectations, because your ego, because society tells you so, because your parents expect you to, etc.
Mhm. So many things that we believe that were just handed down to us. Um, Even like when you're talking about taking your daughter and walking into this, homeless area or whatever you called it. Um, and what did the papers say or what did the news say? It's a dangerous area. Okay. And we get fed all this stuff all the time. I mean, we were having some discord here a couple years ago in Birmingham, Alabama, about having Confederate statues up.
Yeah.
And, it was all over the news and there was a big gathering downtown. And so I rode my bike downtown. There was like to one of these gatherings, there was like 50 people. But the way the news shoots it and the way they glamorize it, you'd have thought there were thousands of people down there, but there wasn't.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Um, I don't know. It's just crazy.
It's crazy. It is, and it's so important to have that understanding of, where things come from because and, I actually did not realize this until a couple of years ago, to be honest. My first major in college when I was getting my bachelor's degree was journalism, and because I loved writing and all these things and didn't get deep in I did not realize the power of the media until a few years ago. You really need to understand where this stuff is coming from because you'll make whole life decisions about things based on what's being spewed to you, and you have no idea how they got there. You have no why. To me, now, like, whenever I do watch the news, it's like, why are they reporting it that way? Why are they
Mm,
reporting that? So, like,
right.
the question to why is gonna take you a lot deeper sometimes than the news itself. Like, yes, take the news, take it in, take the information in, but then dig into why. Because when you get to the why, then you can evaluate how much value you give to that information, how true that feels and that is for you versus just accepting it as truth. That may be somebody's truth, but it doesn't mean that that's your truth. And it doesn't mean that that's what's actually happening. That means that's that person's or that news station's or that journalist's perception of the truth. But the truth isn't the same for all of us, right?
It's, I was at the gym yesterday and my son's a physical trainer and he trains me. And we were having this conversation and I said something and he goes, "That's not the way it is." And then so we have one of those, well, that's your perception and this is my perception. And you think you're right. And I don't really care whether you're right or not, but this is my perception of what just happened in the gym between us. He was like, "No, we did it like this." And I'm like, "In my mind, I did it like this. May not even be real, but that's my perception."
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so important. It is so important to have those conversations and have that awareness. There's probably so many like marriages, relationships, business relationships, and so many things that if we could just sit down and be like, no, this is how I experienced it. This is my perception. This was yours. And we like that gym moment. It happens so often. We're both in the same place at the same time, and we just experienced it completely different, right? There are so many factors that go into how we perceive the world, and failing to have those conversations and that awareness. can literally, like, stall so many things in your life. You feel for me, one of the most important things in relationships, in any type of relationship, is communication. Like, we need to be able to talk about the hard things. Like, if I'm establishing a relationship with someone and we can't talk about the hard things, it's hard. Like, whenever a hard thing comes up and it's not somebody's, like, not welcome or open to talking about it, it's hard to think that I'm gonna move forward in that relationship because, like, if we can't talk about the hard things, like, are we ever gonna be able to talk about the things that matter? Because a lot of the
Right.
things that matter are difficult conversations that need to be had.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uncomfortable because you're one human with one experience and I'm another human with a whole other experience, and, it's quite interesting, and I think that's really, like, when we talk about healing and, like, avoiding, I think that's a really big part of it is learning to accept other people's perception, right, and other people's truth, and not being like, "I'm gonna try to change you. I'm gonna try to convince you that, no, this was the way." No, what you should be trying to do is perhaps understand the way that they see it, not to change your own perception, but just to understand the way that they see it so that you could perhaps in the future understand where they're gonna come from or how they're going to experience that. If it's someone
Mhm.
you care about or something a relationship that you wanna get into, so that you can maybe help them have a better experience or something like that, but not because we're trying to avoid all of the things that come with it, the discomforts, the emotions, the feelings, the ego aspects of it?
Mhm. They might even have a perception that we like,
Yeah, exactly,
that
and
we
that's
can
for me.
enjoy and have fun with, right?
Yes! For me, that's why I love hearing other people's perceptions so much personally is because I'm like, "Okay, so what can I learn from them?" Like, maybe that's something that's interesting to me, and then, I go back and I'm, like, thinking about it, process it, and then I'm like, "Okay, maybe I wanna apply that, or maybe this is a new way for me to look at the world." I feel like that's the beauty of relationships for me, is
Yeah.
being able to get that other person's perception, that other person's experience, and, like, now I get to see the world not just in the way that I experience it, but I get their perception of it too, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yes." It's like I get to enjoy 2 aspects of the world because I'm in this relationship with that person.
That's very interesting. I like that. I'm gonna have to hold on to that for a minute.
See?
Thank
This is exactly we just did that. That's
thank you.
exactly why we share and why we have these conversations, you
Mhm.
know? It's so
Mhm.
I think it's so beautiful. I've been having this, conversation with someone who they are Christian and, like, very hardcore Christian and just sharing about, like, my spirituality, and again, that was one of those situations this week that I was like, "I really don't like this term," like, even the term spirituality, like, it's starting I don't like the
Right.
ugh. Um, but just having the conversations about, like, why I live and why I chose and the way that I see it and the way that they see it. And they brought up something, agape love, that I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
I'd heard it before, but I hadn't really
Mm.
like understood it until they shared it with me. And I was like, that is something that while I don't align with, like, it's beautiful. It's what a beautiful way to, love someone.
So, now I wanna know what you said something like, I don't know, about not understanding or liking or something agape love.
Yeah, I don't align with it.
Tell me about that.
So I'll share it from, the way that they shared. Agape love is loving someone even above yourself. So in, like, for example, romantic relationships, it's like you put that person before yourself. They are like your number 1, even before yourself. So you would be number 2. And you just do everything and you love them unconditionally in terms of, like, you even put their needs and their wants before yours. And
I
just
don't think that's what agape love is.
oh, that's the way that it was.
We're gonna have to look that up. I think that's I think that's an unhealthy form of agape love,
I'm
but I could
glad
be
because
wrong.
I didn't align with that. I'm like, I'm not putting anyone above myself at all.
No,
Like, no.
but I'm not also putting anybody below myself,
Right.
right?
Right. Like, we're
That's what I
all
would that's what I would consider agape love, that I would give to you at the same level I would give to myself.
that's beautiful. That is beautiful. That I can align with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think and we could look it up, obviously, and maybe you should look it up and throw the definition on the podcast or something, but I think the agape love they were talking about, I don't think that that was a clear I don't think that's a clear definition of what agape love is meant to to explain.
I love that, and also, again, that comes in that's their perception of agape love, right? Like,
Right,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? And it's important to have these conversations because I would have gone down here in history being like, "I don't agree with agape love," without, like, the different definition and the different perceptions of it, so I love that.
Yeah, and, and just like we talked about the news and talking about how dangerous it was for you to go, we have to remember that the words that we use are words that we've made up to try and explain our perceptions, right? But, your perception and my perception, if I say, think of a tree, your tree and my tree are not going to be the same tree,
Mm.
right? But we still have to use these words in this world to communicate. I guess we don't have to, but we choose to. Makes things easier, right? We don't have full telepathy in this environment. We do on the other side. Um, so we just have to be careful with our words and understand that what we mean by a particular word is not necessarily what the other person receives.
Like, the usage of words, I've had such and I love words, like, I'm a reader, I'm an avid reader, I've been since I was, like, 14 years old, and so I love words, but along the journey of my spirituality, I've had such an issue with words, and you just put it into words for me as to why, is because these words have different meanings for each one of us, and even when we know the definition of it, right, like the Webster's dictionary definition of it,
Right.
then, we each experience for example, like the word truth,
Right.
there's truth means so many different things to so many different people, so I'm an avid believer in the importance of communication, that, this is the way that we communicate for the most part is with words, and so I do think it's important to for all of us, especially like myself, I hold myself really accountable to that, is to try to be the best communicator that I can be with words, and there are other ways of communication too, like the nonverbal becomes really important when you're in person and things like that. I do think those things are important despite, you know, not loving it because this is what we have and we don't have full telepathy. But it is fun when you're with other people who have like any telepathy and like experiencing that. That's a whole, oh my God. It's like a whole other beautiful experience that there are literally no words for unless you're there and experience it. It's
hmm
oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Um, why do you think that spiritual teachings sometimes encourage avoidance?
Why does spiritual teaching encourage avoidance? I don't know. Does I'm going to say, does true spiritual teaching uh, promote avoidance?
I don't so I'm glad that that's where you started. I love that because that was my first point. I don't believe that true spiritual teachings promotes avoidance. I promotes avoidance. I feel like our society, our capitalist nature, what has been passed down in some religions, inaccurate as it is today, is what promotes avoidance. I do not believe that spirituality in its true form and in its true nature does promote that. I specifically feel like our capitalist society has taken anywhere that spirituality can promote avoidance and highlighted that and like put that in people's faces so that, you know, the capitalist society can benefit.
I guess that's to me that we're rounding back to bypassing
Yeah.
and, maybe I don't know. I have not seen what you're talking about in the world, but if we're avoiding, that's definitely spiritual bypassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is exactly what, what's happening. And I think that's why a lot of us avoid. Like, I used to get so angry when I'd see people. after my awakening, of course, after I was, one of them.
After you were woke.
Yeah, after I was woke. I used to be like, why is everyone avoiding their emotions and like why is everyone running from these things? And it's, just being aware that it's so easy to, especially like our phones are magical things. I think, depending on how you use them, right? You get to communicate with friends across the world and you get to
Sure.
have all this knowledge in your pocket. But if you are using it to avoid, then it's also a great tool for that too. And I feel like, we have the tool in our hands to do whichever one of the two we choose to do. And it's just easy to not feel pain. It's easier. We've been conditioned since we were babies, right? One of the examples that I've used before that has really stuck to me is from the moment that we're born, and I understand logistically why, but, like, we're born as babies, right? Like, you're in the hospital, they take you out of your mother's, womb, or she pushes you out, and you're out into the world, and another human holds you, and the next thing they do is they bring you to this bed, and they take all these measurements, and they do all these things, and then about, like, the 5th or 10th thing they do after you've joined this world as a baby is they put a diaper on you.
Yeah.
And from that moment, society is making you not have to be uncomfortable.
That's that's interesting. I've never thought about that.
That's literally how I think about that. I think about that society is telling you any discomfort that is part of being a human, we're going to take it away. Right? With that diaper, we're saying we don't want you to like pee and like, shit on yourself, right? Like as a baby. And again, like I said, I understand it logistically, but that's what we're saying. That's what we're doing. We are training that baby to not have to worry about being aware. And of course, it's a baby, but like, as we get older, 2, 3-year-olds, what we're doing is we're telling that kid with that diaper that they do not need to be aware of when their body's telling them that they need to go to the bathroom, and we're taking
Mhm.
away, like so if you don't need to be aware of your body from that early on, it's so easy to not have to be aware of your body as life goes on.
That's very interesting. Do you think that a baby has capability of, not peeing and pooping?
No, I don't think a baby does have that capability, but I do think that a baby has the capability of sending signals of when they would need to go. Like, if you
Sure.
were in tune enough with your baby, I believe that you would know when your baby was gonna go and your baby could give you a signal. I didn't try with any of my kids. I wish that,
I was gonna say, I think you need to do an experiment with this. Sounds like a messy experiment,
very
but
messy.
but if you could, maybe we're going to, change the way a person comes into the world and feels about the world, feels about themselves differently.
And when I had my first son, I went, like, really what at the time they used to call granola, like, super green, like, I didn't use any harmful chemicals, we organic, like, all of the crazy. I was totally extreme when I had my son, and there was always this argument amongst because I was very deep in that community as a first-time mom, this argument about, like, when do you take your kids' diapers away? And I never understood the fight. I'm like, "Why are we fighting about this? Like, you take your kid's diaper away when you take it away, like, whatever, to each their own, whatever works for people's lifestyle." But now I have a problem with it, and it's from this perspective. Now I'm like, "You should take that kid's diaper away as soon as humanly possible so that they can start to understand their bodily needs as a human. They can start to understand, and feel and focus on within, what's happening within them in their body. Um, from that perspective, I have an issue with it. A great segue is, talking about how we can integrate spirituality without abandoning accountability. What do you think?
About abandoning accountability. Feel like there's plenty of accountability in the world. That's what I feel like. I mean, if I'm not harming anybody, if I'm doing what my soul work is, if I'm, for the most part, being a reasonably good citizen, I don't know, how much more accountability do I need than that?
I agree with you. So this one was thinking about accountability. I feel like you said it perfectly. Like there is enough accountability in the world. Like I really feel like we're, for me, often like fighting against the grain of being able to just be. Like I still work 9 to 5 job and that feels so unnatural for my body. And you'd think I've been doing it for 25, like for a long time. You'd think like my body would just be like, yeah, this is the thing that we do. And it's so normal and I'm used to it. But I feel like there is enough accountability, but in terms of integrating spirituality into the world that we already live in is sort of the way that I thought about it. How can I integrate my spirituality without bypassing my responsibilities, without bypassing, all of the 3D things that need to happen, taking care of my children, driving my children to, sports or whatever we choose to do, being the provider for my kids and my family. Like, how do I integrate spirituality into all those things without removing the need for all of the responsibilities, or removing my ability to complete and sort of, step up to all my responsibilities? I think it's really just mindfulness that we've talked about. Like, integrating spirituality into my life versus removing things is just a matter of being conscious and saying, I'm going to wake up early. So for me, at first, when I started journaling and meditating, um, I had a morning routine. So instead of getting up at the normal time that I would get up, like 6:30, I'd get up at 5 or 5:30, journal and meditate, and I would do some stretches before my day got started. So it was just about integrating practices, spiritual practices into everyday life versus taking away like, "Oh, I'm not gonna go to work anymore because I have to meditate." Like, that would be lovely. I'd love to get there, but
Until you had to meditate all day, and then you want to go back to work.
yeah, so that's
Yeah.
sort of how I think about it.
I think I mean, we're already spiritual. So, I mean, this integration of our spirituality into the world shouldn't be something that's hard. It really is just, if we're working on ourselves, then our spirituality will just flow out of us. And I don't even want to call it spirituality. At this point in time, I want to just say our agape love, our wisdom, our desire for the best for everybody as we're creating these realities, and does getting up and journaling help? Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's for everybody all the time, but yeah, that definitely helps, because anytime that you can separate yourself from the routine, it causes you to relook at what's going on. And it's that separation and that quiet time that you have that drives you back inward. And when you drive inward, then you can get in tune with not the face mask that we have to put on in the world to survive,
Mm.
but in the true expression of ourselves, and that expression of God consciousness through ourselves into the world. Does that make sense?
It does. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think that's a great way to wrap up this episode, about spiritual bypassing and just how you can easily integrate spirituality because that's the best word we have for it right now,
Yeah.
into your life.
It's holding your daughter's hand and going and seeing, this homeless section of wherever you were, and being okay with it and acknowledging it and realizing that that's what goes on in this world.
Mhm.
And you can't save those people. You can't save anybody. You can barely save yourself, right? But it's by putting ourselves in different situations, uncomfortable situations, which includes the quiet, that brings the revelation. Uh, just that everything has to unfold. And the only person that we can work on is ourselves.
Yep,
So,
I love that. All right, until next time.
okay. Namaste.